Alabama finally has its man. So what do you think of it?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every single day. You guys are the absolute best. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and I'll be talking about FanDuel in just a minute. Jimmy, Alabama has its man, Kalen DeBoer from Washington. Coach of the year. His team won the playoff game against Texas. They go to the national championship. They have third place guy in the Heisman. They win the Joe Moore Award. A lot of positives here for Washington. What do you think of the hire?
Well, I'm even more ecstatic than most. This is the reason, to be totally honest. I mean, when the Saban resignation happened, and it was time, okay, in your head, okay, who's next? What are we going to do from here? The first thought that comes to my mind was obviously Dan Lanning. I'll be honest. I mean, that was the first name that came to mind for me right after the Saban resignation was Dan Lanning. Now that was me. That's me talking, not Alabama, not Greg Byrne. But the more we got into this, and then we learned that, by the way, that the Lanning thing wasn't going to happen. Not that he said no. People, that's a big misnomer that's out there. Dan Lanning was not offered the Alabama head coaching job at all. So he never said no. But obviously Lanning was a guy that was considered, and he was my favorite. But once Lanning was off the board, I'll be honest, I moved to DeBoer myself. So right after my initial thought of, I think Dan Lanning would be the right guy, my next guy up was Kalen DeBoer for me. So I'm thrilled with this. I just think he's a winner. He's won everywhere he's been. I like the offense. I like the demeanor. I like the personality. Here's the number one thing, Luke, and this is number one for me. The more I've thought about it, he said yes. And by that, I don't mean, hey, this is the pretty girl that we asked out on a date and she said yes. What I mean is he could have sat right where he's at and doubled his pay and been the head coach at a great university in a good football program that's moving to the Big Ten. And Kalen DeBoer and his family would have been set for life coaching big-time football in a big city like Seattle, Washington, and things would have been great for him. But you know what he said? He's like, no. I want to follow Nick Saban. I want to coach at Alabama. I want to jump into the broiler. I want the pressure of, hey, if we don't win every week by a certain amount of points, they might run me out of here. I want that. I embrace it. And just the very fact that he said yes to following Nick Saban at Alabama, he may be exactly what Alabama needs because, man, this job's always been big. Nick Saban made it bigger. And I think the fact that when you pair his resume with the very fact that he wants to be here, you probably got the right guy.
Yeah, I mean, this job is not for the faint of heart. There's no doubt about that. I'm with you, Jimmy. I like the hire a lot. Look, I have no problem saying I probably would have chosen Lanning myself if you're saying just line up everybody. But at the same time, I'm down with this. I mean, look, this guy, there's some people that are pointing to the recruiting. Washington's not very far up there. I had a Roman from Locked On Huskies on a podcast, right before this was announced, really, because he knew the writing was on the wall. And just like I told him, look, it's different recruiting at Washington than it is Alabama. It just is. I mean, we have more resources. We have better players in our vicinity than Washington does. It's just the way it is. So I think it's going to be a lot easier. And Nick Saban's going to stay on board for a little bit. I'm going to assume, we don't know this yet, but I'm going to assume we're going to have some assistants that probably stay from the previous staff. I'm hoping a T-Rob that stick around and help with recruiting. Who knows? I'm not going to tell him who to hire, and I'm not going to be disappointed, whatever. I'm just telling you what my hope is. I do like the fact that Ryan Williams has already retweeted or liked some tweets about how Kalen DeBoer is a home run hire from the likes of Barrett Sallee and Pete Thamel and all those cats. So I think there's a lot to look. There's a lot to sell. You just had Michael Penix that was just slinging the ball all over the field. He had an off game in the national championship. There's no doubt about it. And but so did Alabama against Michigan. So it's just one of those things. And he did take Washington national championship game. He did go 5-0 against Sarkisian and Dan Lanning, two guys that Alabama fans wanted. So I feel like this is a good hire. I see some jubilation from Auburn fans, Husky Harston and blah, blah. I mean, come on. They're not even comparable. They're not even in the same area code. But I am going to admit that it is going to be different recruiting South Alabama versus being from South Dakota. That's going to be a different animal.
Yeah, the comparisons of Brian Harsin to Kalen DeBoer, I hate that I'm even wasting oxygen with this, but this is the comparison. It's like saying, that Justin Bieber, that little jerk, that little weirdo Bieber, he's from Canada. Everybody from Canada must be like that. It's a nation of Justin Biebers. And by that, I mean, the only comparison with Brian Harsin and Kalen DeBoer is that they both coached out West. That's it. Well, so did Sark. So did Sark, the same guy that everybody calls now one of the top 5 coaches in the sport. He coached at Washington.
So does Lanning.
So does Lanning. That's exactly right. Lincoln Riley, super hot name in the business, or certainly was. I'm just saying that the only comparison Brian Harsin and Kalen DeBoer is geography, which is like saying everyone in Canada is like Justin Bieber, when in fact, really no one from Canada is like Justin Bieber except Justin. So it's just silly. Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere he's been. I know he coached at a small college, the NAI school, Sioux Falls, where he won so many national championships. He's a national champion at the NAI level. But if you told me, if you said, hey, the coach at Hoover is 104-12 playing 1A schools in Alabama, I'd still be impressed. Like, well, he's played 116 1A schools. He's won 104 times. That's good.
That's a lot.
I mean, he's 104-12. Well, how is he proven at the highest level? Well, he showed up at Washington and won 10 games. And what did he do for the follow-up? Got Washington the national championship game. Washington. That's not Alabama. It's not even Florida or Tennessee. It's sort of Ole Miss, maybe a little better. But I'm just saying, anyone not impressed with what Kalen DeBoer has done, you're just not going to be impressed. Now, that said, anyone that questions whether he can recruit at the level he will be required to recruit, that is a fair question. That is fair. It's fair to say, can he do this? What's not fair is the assumption that he can't do it. Because why would you just assume that? Because Nick Saban used to be the coach at Michigan State, and he never signed a top 5 class, and LSU hired him. And I bet if we could go back to message boards in 1999 in Baton Rouge, there would be some, as we now know, idiots saying, I bet this Saban guy from East Lansing, Michigan, he can't recruit in the South. He's not from here. There were comments like that about Nick Saban in 1999 in Baton Rouge. And I know this, let's tell on ourselves. I bet when we hired Nate Oates from Buffalo University, Nate Oates from Minnesota and Wisconsin, we hired him from Buffalo University. I bet we can find a lot of message board posts about 5 years ago on BOL and other sites of fans saying, Nate Oates, he's not from here. He can't recruit. There is no evidence that he can recruit at this level. He'll be a failure recruiting. When in fact, Nate Oates has been by metric miles the best recruiter in the history of Alabama basketball, by miles and miles.
Are there metric miles? Is that
are there not? No, I guess there's not. I've been saying that my whole life. I am just mathematically busted.
I'm laughing at you.
Mathematically busted. There can't be. There's metric kilometers. There's American miles.
I mean, it's also redundant. If you're saying metric kilometers, like
that's kilometer.
It's just kilometers. They're in the metric system.
So I need to ditch metric miles. Do I just go with miles or do I go with kilometers? Because I've been saying metric miles.
You know what you're doing? You're doing the thing that people do when they go, I could care less. Well, that means you could care less. So you do care.
You do care?
Yeah.
I do that.
So,
Yeah,
all right.
I got my own. I'm on the roll. I'm on the Germans bombing Pearl Harbor roll.
All right, Jimmy, when we come back, we're going to talk about what the first move of Kalen DeBoer should be. Right now, though, I want to tell you about Gametime. You know I love the Gametime app. I've used it a gazillion times. Used it for a Miami Dolphins game. Used it to send my son to the World Series game. Used it for Bama, Tennessee, so I could take my daughter and her friend that never been to a college football game before to go check out Bama, Tennessee this year. Use code LOCKEDON when you go download the Gametime app. This is so easy. You can see where your seat will be, the view from your seat. That is so awesome. The Gametime app is so easy to download. You get the best prices guaranteed. They've got last minute deals like you wouldn't believe. You will just love this app. I used it to go to the Bama Liberty game in Legacy Arena a couple of Saturdays ago. It was fantastic and so easy and so quick. Everything just went flawlessly, and I saved a ton of money. So go to Gametime, download that app. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. You'll get $20 off. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all one word with the Gametime app. And thank me later here on Locked On Bama. All right. So a lot of things. First of all, Ryan Williams is decommitted. Alabama just hired a coach. I mean, so he's got a staff to get together. Then Isaiah Bond has entered the transfer portal. There are rumors of Caleb Downs potentially getting in the transfer portal. Those seem to have died down a little, but who knows? What do you think Kalen DeBoer's first move should be?
Kalen DeBoer's first move, boy, there's a lot to consider because there's a lot to do. I mean, it'll make me tired, because I'm old. I'm mentally I'm older than Nick. It makes me tired thinking of it. But what is the very first thing he should do? In my opinion, it is recruit, but not recruit the Alabama roster. He needs to meet with the team and head off a transfer portal exodus. Isaiah Bond was the first to move into the portal. Bond moved into the portal, guys, well before it was known that Kalen DeBoer was going to be the coach. He did not get in the portal after that was imminent.
Do you think he could come back?
Before. I do think it is a possibility that Isaiah Bond might return. Here is my concern, though. Isaiah Bond is visiting Texas, for those that don't know. He's headed to Austin, Texas today. He will visit Texas over the weekend. I'm just going to be a little cynical here. Texas has an extremely robust NIL program. I think they're going to sell him on Quinn Ewers' return, where they have a first-round pick, a kind of a proven first-round pick, a quarterback, and that NIL money. And I think it's going to be difficult. And for any Alabama fan out there that wants to hold this against Kalen DeBoer as the first time they get upset with him, that's outrageous. That's outrageous. I think
this was already in the works.
This was already in the works before DeBoer got here, and he's already going to Austin, Texas, and they have a lot to offer. Sark's offense, Quinn Ewers at quarterback, and that NIL money is going to be significant. Let's be honest. So, but I do think that Bond will take a phone call. And I think DeBoer will try to recruit him back.
All right, and that's probably what I would have said too. Is outside of get your staff, recruit your current roster, and then recruit everybody else. Obviously, Ryan Williams, number one on the list. Washington did just have their all Pac-12 cornerback enter the portal. It makes sense that he may want to follow DeBoer. That would be great. Muhammad is his name, and he played well in the championship games.
He just they're guys, and since they lost their head coach, Washington's players, a 30-day portal has now opened for Washington players to enter the portal because they have lost their coach.
And since that offensive line won the Joe Moore Award, I have no idea what age that center is, but I would certainly like to find out. But this is interesting because, look, there were also some rumors. Again, this is all hearsay, but it makes sense that potentially Isaiah Bond and some of the other receivers, maybe, they were a little frustrated with Alabama's passing game, which makes some sense. Let's be real. Alabama's passing game this year seemed like it was, deep ball or dump off. and very little intermediate passing game. At least it seemed that way. So if you're Bond and if you're DeBoer and Ryan Williams or whomever, Jalen Milroe, I wonder if DeBoer is thinking, okay, this is going to be a true open competition. And if it is, and I love Jalen Milroe for the 1,000th time, I'm cool with Jalen Milroe continuing to start. I would love it. I hope Jalen Milroe can develop under DeBoer. I think that'd be the best story of all. But you do have Julian Sayin coming in. You do have Dylan Lonergan there. You got Ty Simpson there still. You got, you just wonder if somebody's going to have a better shot given the system DeBoer runs.
That is fascinating, that very question. And it's already occurred to me, one of the first thoughts I've had about Kalen DeBoer before Nick Saban resigned. This is a thought I had about DeBoer a month ago. And when honestly, I didn't know too much about him, but I think this is real curious. And I'm going to make this point about Washington, and then y'all decide how it translates to Alabama. But with Michael Penix at quarterback, they've been dynamic. They've been spectacular. And I think Penix is a first-round pick. He's a great spread quarterback. He's such a great pro arm, but Penix is also dynamic. I would call Michael Penix a dynamic quarterback, not a true dual threat. He's not Michael Vick. He's not even Jalen Milroe, but Penix is a really good athlete. He's a good athlete, but he's a dynamic player, makes plays off platform, rolls out, makes plays, just a dynamic athlete playing quarterback. So in my head, I'm like, well, that's the DeBoer offense, right? The DeBoer offense as run by Michael Penix, who's been the quarterback for 2 years. Great, as we know, third in the Heisman race. Great player, probably a first-round pick this year. So Penix cycles out, and you're like, well, is Washington going to go to the portal and get a quarterback to replace Penix? And they do. And who do they get? A guy we're all very familiar with in Tuscaloosa, Will Rogers from Mississippi State, because we've played Will Rogers seemingly 10 times. So Will Rogers is Kalen DeBoer's choice to replace Michael Penix. I'm not criticizing in any way. I'm not even questioning it. I'm just looking at it like, isn't that kind of an odd choice? Because Will Rogers is nothing like Michael Penix in terms of the style of their play. Will is a pocket passer. He's not dynamic at all. Not as an insult. I'm just saying Will Rogers is uncomfortable rolling out. You can pressure Will Rogers into some trouble, but he's very good from the pocket. He's a good passer. He's a good game manager. So what does DeBoer want at quarterback? I find that a fascinating question because we've seen him with Penix, yet his handpicked choice is Will Rogers. So I think what Kalen DeBoer wants at quarterback is fascinating. I don't care what the answer is. I want whatever he thinks is the best fit for what he wants to do. Now, he's going to be a kid walking into a candy store with the quarterbacks at Alabama. Let's be honest. Whether you're talking about Jalen Milroe, who finished sixth in the Heisman race, Ty Simpson, five-star Ty Simpson, Dylan Lonergan, who impressed the heck out of Nick Saban all spring and all fall, and, of course, Julian Sayin, a quarterback that Kalen DeBoer is going to know. Julian Sayin's from the West Coast. You can bet Washington recruited Julian Sayin. They know exactly who he is, and now he's inheriting him. So it'll be a kid in a candy store for him at quarterback, but I'm fascinated by, okay, what style of quarterback best fits your offense? Because between Michael Penix and Will Rogers, you're showing us Venus and Mars. They couldn't be any more different.
In fact, I would take it a step further. He wanted Will Rogers. If I would say, okay, what is the exact opposite, considering they play the same position, of Will Rogers? That's Jalen Milroe.
Yes.
I mean, Penix is more like Will Rogers than Milroe is like Will Rogers.
True.
So true. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy. I'm not trying to do anything. And in fact,
we're just curious. I mean, I'm pro. I want Jalen Milroe to win it. I keep saying this. I was so blown away by how awesome this guy was when I talked to him. I want him to be awesome. I want him to win the Heisman. I want him to be Alabama's starter next year. But I think the question is very fair given the style that's coming into play here. So, Jimmy, we're going to talk more about this hire here right in just a second. Right now, though, I want to tell everybody about FanDuel. Go check out FanDuel.com/lockedon. The NFL playoffs are going on. They're going to be super hot, except for the Chiefs and Dolphins, where it'll be minus 30 wind chill
good luck to I'm sorry your season is over. But FanDuel.com is where you want to go. You download the app. It's so easy to use. Look, right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's whether you win or lose. You get $150 in bonus bets whether you win or whether you lose. It doesn't matter. You win either way. So go check out FanDuel.com. You can do parlays. You can do in-game parlays. You can do in-game bets. You can do whatever you want to do at FanDuel. It's so much fun. It is America's #1 sports book, and they are an official partner of the NFL. At the same time, they're also doing stuff with college basketball and NBA and all this other stuff. Make it fun. Make every game fun. And look, it's going to be cold this Sunday, so you're going to be all wrapped up watching a game, and you know you want to put a little action on there. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. You're going to love it. All right, so now that Kalen DeBoer's been hired, and you know there's going to be a lot more to sift through here. There'll be some more transfer portal news, boys and girls. That's going to happen. But I'm curious, Jimmy. Now, what are you most looking forward to? I mean, let's go into next season. I've already got plans to go to the game at Wisconsin. So, I mean, my first thought when I was thinking was, I'm going to get to see Kalen DeBoer's first road game at Alabama. That's pretty cool to me. But that game against Georgia, man, that's going to be monstrous. And how do you feel like, Kalen DeBoer's first SEC game at home at night against the Georgia Bulldogs? That's a big deal.
It's going to blow him away and his family. No, we haven't mentioned this yet. I'm a big softball fan. I know, everybody listening is Kalen DeBoer's daughter is an outstanding softball player. She is the number 13 prospect in the nation in her class. She is committed to the University of Washington. Got to think Alabama's got a good shot here, though, right? And she's a hitter. So anyway, just throwing that in, you're probably also picking up a heck of a softball commitment.
I think that's why we hired him.
I think, hey, as a softball fan, I'm cool with it. But I think it's going to blow his family away. The game atmosphere for the night game against Georgia, because it's already set at night. That night game against Georgia, that'll be the first huge game. Now, he's got to play the road game at Wisconsin first. But the first SEC home game, I believe, is Georgia. Wow, what an atmosphere to break into the SEC. And I'm sure Washington's got a good atmosphere. I've never been to Seattle. I've certainly never been to a Husky football game. I'm sure for the Pac-12, that's probably Washington and Oregon were probably the best in terms of atmosphere, most SEC-like atmosphere. But again, Washington's in Seattle. It's a big city place. They got pro sports. They got the Seahawks. I mean, the University of Washington is the second most popular football team in its own city because obviously Seahawks mania in the NFL, right? Wow. I mean, he's going to get to Tuscaloosa, and Alabama is like the Seahawks and the Huskies all rolled into one. I think that night game atmosphere in Georgia, they're going to love it. They're going to absolutely love it. But at the same time, the magnitude of it is going to be like, wow. I
mean, it's going to blow him away. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Here's something that's a little bizarre. So, because I was thinking, okay, I wonder if game day could be at that game. Now, I think there's some other big games, Alabama, Wisconsin weekend. I'll need to look them up. But
you mean for Alabama, Georgia?
Well, I think game day would be at Alabama, Georgia, but Alabama, Wisconsin, I was thinking.
I don't think they would do, just my knowledge of game day, and we know some game day folks, me and you. I don't think they would do Alabama 2 weeks in a row.
It wouldn't be 2 weeks in a row. There'd be a week off.
Oh, there is a week off. That's true. So, 2 out of 3 weeks. I don't think so. I still
agree.
Don't think so.
But the reason, and so I was just thinking, though, I wonder who Wisconsin plays before Alabama. You want some irony? They play Western Michigan to start. Of course, he coached at Eastern Michigan. Kalen DeBoer did. He OC at Eastern Michigan. Then guess who they play the next week? South Dakota. He's from South Dakota. That's just a little weird tidbit.
It is a little weird. It is weird.
But boy, you think about this next year.
I hope you didn't hear my Mount Rushmore joke the other night. Remember we were talking about Kalen DeBoer and I made some sort of Mount Rushmore joke and I had the wrong Dakota. Hope that
you were off by a metric mile.
I was off by metric miles. Hope he doesn't listen to the show
So, I mean, you think about what he's walking into. I mean, he is walking into a treasure trove, but at the same time, you're first. Alabama goes on the road to play a Power 5 team from the Big Ten in Wisconsin. Then your first SEC conference game is at night at home against Georgia. You've got to go to Tennessee, to LSU, to Oklahoma. You got to go to Vanderbilt, but those are 3 huge games. And then, of course, you're going to play in your first ever Iron Bowl, which is going to be ridiculous. I know you played in the Apple Cup, and no offense to the Apple Cuppers out there, this ain't the Apple Cup. So it's going to be something wild. And boy, what a strange 46 hours has been. And Jimmy, I think we've hit it out of the park. Look, most people nationally think this is a huge monster grand slam. Some people locally are worried about the fit in terms of recruiting. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to see how this thing goes. I also want to see what kind of staff we keep. And also the fact that Nick Saban's going to have an office right there in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think that helps. So I'm 100% behind this hire.
I'm absolutely behind it. All Alabama fans should be. Everybody should welcome Kalen DeBoer to town. Everybody should welcome him to Alabama football. And hey, let's start right now with let's be fair. Let's be fair to him. He's not going to be Nick Saban. He's not. He's not Nick Saban and never will be. And I don't think Saban's accomplishments. It's just unfair to expect that. And you know what else Alabama fans did for Nick Saban? 92,000 showed up for his first day. I'm not demanding that we do the same for Kalen DeBoer because that's like a ridiculously sized crowd. But let's show up for Kalen DeBoer and get behind him and these kids. And if you're like, well, I don't like the hire. Well, how about liking the kids? And they need your support. And we're going to support him and see how it plays out. And recruiting wise, I don't think Ryan Williams is a fair test. I think he's going to be judged by that. But that's not a fair test. Signing day is less than 30 days away. He doesn't know this kid, and Auburn's been recruiting him for years. And Auburn's right up the road. And Auburn's, I'm sure, made up a ton of ground in the last 48 hours. And I don't think it's a fair litmus test at all. But let's see how he does. If he pulls it off, hey, that's a heck of a sign. But his failing to sign Ryan Williams, I don't think should be held against him. It's just too difficult to recruit a player of that magnitude and convince him that his entire future is safe in your hands in 30 days.
That's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back shortly. Who knows? There's some more news. We will be back. But until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.